when somebody sort of opens that door and goes, oh, you actually do have something that could compete at a certain level. And so we took a shot and sent some things in. We were shocked to get nominated. And then we went to the award ceremony and we were equally shocked to actually win the dang thing. So it took somebody coming along to say, the work you're doing measures up quality-wise to everything else that's competing. So there are ways to win Emmys that aren't about being the star of the show.
This is festivalPass Stories, a podcast series is told by the people who create and make festivals come to life. You will go behind the stage, kitchen, or studio door to hear the stories of passion and inspiration that started some of the world's most beloved festivals. Hear the startup stories and how an idea went from what if to what's next. All right, friends, this is the festivalPass Stories podcast. We are, of course, presented by Dos Hombres, the artisanal mezcal meant to be shared. Created by Aaron Paul and Brian Cranston. Have a drink with us at doshombres.com/delivery. Ever want to have the opportunity to invest in a product early that could be the next Airbnb? All right, I'm listening. Learn why entrepreneurs and celebrities with exits approaching $10 billion. Yep, with a B, billion. I've already invested in festivalPass. Go to invest.festivalpass.com to learn more. My guest today is 4-time Emmy-winning producer, director. He's participated in crafting internationally recognized shows, such as the opening ceremonies for the Salt Lake Winter Olympics in 2002 and the Academy Awards. Ladies and gentlemen, if it would please the Academy, I should say, please welcome Chris Homsley. Chris, what is happening, my man?
And the crowd goes mild.
Yeah, and while people say, oh, the live events are coming back, for you, they never left. And you've been producing live events and live TV since the halcyon days of the 90s. Let's just leave it there. Let's just call it that. What was that first break like for you way back in the day? And was that in New York? Was that here? Was it with ABC?
Well, I did eventually work at ABC in New York, but it started at a local affiliate. I came out of high school having done theater and playing in rock and roll garage bands. So like the whole live
any
performance
I've heard
thing.
of any.
Probably not. Nope.
Are you still playing? I hope you're still playing in a garage band.
Yeah, I still play and I produce some acts and whatever, because once your music is in your blood, it's kind of hard to leave. And I grew up in the South, and it was never really a thing about are you a rock player or are you a blues player? It's like if you had a piano in the living room, you're expected to play anything that came up, really. So from doing music, I understood a little bit about audio, and that's how I got my entree into the TV world, was running sound. And then pretty quickly climbed the ranks up until the point I was directing and producing special projects. And luckily where we were was a family-owned station, and they were pretty open to us trying different things. So the station bought a couple of movie packages, and they wanted to have a host like Bravo and those stations used to do.
Yeah.
And so a whole bunch of us auditioned, and they liked us all so much that they said, why don't all of you do it and take turns? So we ended up doing this hosting the movie thing, and then of course, because we're all smart we turned it into our own sketch comedy show eventually, because we grew up with Kids in the Hall and and Second City and all that stuff, and SNL being our influences. So and the TV station I really saw as my grad school, because I got to do documentary work. We had a very aggressive sports director at the time who convinced the station we could do multi-camera live game coverage. And so I was doing everything from football to hockey We did some NASCAR coverage. So, working for a local affiliate, in not a big market, we got to do a lot of things. And that's really where I honed most of my skills.
So you're doing sketch comedy, sports, news, all this kind of stuff. And then how did you end up getting that break to come to New York City and to get this big opportunity with ABC?
Yeah, so the ABC thing kind of happened as a fluke one time during a season where they needed some people to fill in. And I had actually just left the station where I was working. And so it was just a very lucky break.
Timing and so on.
Yeah. So, they needed some help filling rotations on their newscast, which I did for a few months, and then actually ended up directing Live with Regis and Kathy Lee back when they were still on the show. That'll tell you how long ago it was.
You were Gelman before Gelman.
Well, Gelman was there. Super nice guy. Regis, God bless, was one of the nicest guys. Like, he'd come and hang out with the crew and have lunch with us and just want to get to know us. Like,
he did seem like I met him just like on the street, and he's like, "Hey, how you doing, buddy? All right, good to see you. Let's go Irish." And like,
yeah, he's a good dude. So after that, I had gone to work for a video game development company. It was a very interesting company because it was born out of military technology, if that makes any sense whatsoever. So out of this one company that had been developing these technologies, they split out into 3 different divisions. Basically, I don't know if the Army told them, "Hey, you guys need to break this up," or the guys who were running it wanted to roll off into their own thing. One was actually an early version of online streaming video, which was like completely fascinating at the time. Nobody was really breaking that ground. But the thing that
Al Gore hadn't even created the internet yet, right?
Right. Like, we were waiting. Come on,
Al, let's go.
So there was another set of technology that was based on, the idea was they wanted to be able to digitize a battlefield. So if you had 2 armies coming at each other, that you would film it, and then you would be able to go back and break it down digitally later, because you could take the pixels of the shots and recreate the movements and analyze what went right or wrong. I think that was the general idea.
A war game, almost.
Right. So what we did is we pointed those cameras at a football field, and then we did all the motion capture for each position of players and recreated highlights from games. And we had, our initial deal was with the SEC for college football.
Okay.
And so, a big 40-yard touchdown pass, we would recreate that in 3D models. We had the stadium models just like any video game company would. We had all the uniforms and all that stuff. And then you could play quarterback. So the idea was, we immersed.
I wish I could play quarterback.
Right. Doesn't everybody? So the idea is, here you go. You get a few controls. The play starts, and you get to see if you can do the same or better than the team actually did when the play happened in real life. So that was like the really edge, the bleeding edge technology we were trying to work on. But we also had a pretty simple thing where we were taking, we had a deal with the IRL, the Indy Racing League, and we would recreate the Indy 500. So we would get all the timing data from the track and just put the cars back on the track in segments, and then immerse you in a car and see if you could compete against the pro drivers.
Incredible.
So it was a pretty interesting time.
Almost like early version of virtual reality.
Yeah. And that's, the company had some, this is, late 90s. So we're talking about really starting all of those things, really starting to kind of come into being. The same company also created a thing where a viewfinder for a museum, where you would point it at a dinosaur, and then the dinosaur would come to life in the viewfinder sort of a thing. So that kind of AR overlay sort of thing. And so, that's the reason that I went back home to participate, because I thought it was really super cool. And then the irony of what really gave me my major break was 9/11. As tragic as that was, the investors pulled their money out of that development company. So we shut down. At that time, everybody was like, what does the world even mean right now? So I was very fortunate that a friend of mine who had been going back and forth between Atlanta and LA, John Caldwell, called me up and said, dude, what happened? You guys were doing such cool stuff. I said, we lost our funding.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you'd want to come work with me. I'm like, sure, why not? And within a couple of weeks, I had a phone interview with the executive in charge of production for the Salt Lake ceremonies. That was Kathy Erickson.
Back to TV. Here we go.
Right. So this becomes the perfect blend of extending what I had been doing. Like live sports was really like the extended length, multi-camera live event being broadcast. And so now I'm carrying all that forward to the Olympics.
This is in Salt Lake City, and this is pretty exciting. It's the first time that the Olympics are back in the United States. The Winter Olympics are back in the United States since 1980, since Lake Placid. And then the big crescendo moment happens at the opening ceremonies, which you produced. And it's the Miracle on Ice hockey team lighting the torch in Salt Lake. What was that whole experience like, putting those guys together and making that moment happen and keeping it pretty much under wraps?
Well, so let me stack it this way. First of all,
break that down as a live sports person would do.
Right. So first of all, I want to make sure everyone who was really running the thing is noted. Legendary producer Don Mischer was at the helm for that project, and David Goldberg, Jeff Bennett, a lot of other top people, Kenny Ortega, Bobby Dickinson, who's a legendary lighting director, so on and so forth. And that was the producing team who really, really put all the aspects of the show together. It was just my job to help execute them. And there were some things that happened in the show that I didn't even know. So there was a tight little circle
above your pay grade. Certain things were above your pay grade.
Right. There's a very tight group of people who are the ones who are only going to know certain things. Like I would know things like who the musical acts were going to be, and so some of the VIP appearances and whatnot. So, the goal of a show like that, particularly because it was the first international gathering after 9/11. We're talking about like 6 months later, basically.
Right.
If even that.
Even.
And so, the story thread and the special moments are really what it's all about. I think for Don Mischer and his group, it's putting the talent together is second nature to them, because it's the same group that's worked on the Oscars, the Kennedy Center honors, did every major live special with Michael Jackson and Barbra Streisand over the years. Yeah. So these folks are, they've got the talent people, they've got relationships with Neil Diamond and whoever. So, they can make that sort of magic happen. The thing that was in terms of getting the hockey team together for that kind of moment is, that's really the big penultimate thing, the lighting of the torch and then the fireworks and the celebration. And, so every host city looks for, what would make that moment really, chef's kiss, so to speak. And I will be honest and say I have no idea how they pulled that off, other than they just made phone calls.
Yeah.
And said, please come do it. Do it for your country. Do it for the love of your sport, do it for whatever, the celebration. And particularly with the Salt Lake games, I hadn't worked on any other games, but from my colleagues who had worked on, Atlanta at least before then, the extraordinary thing was because of 9/11 and also the city of Salt Lake. I have to give massive credit to the people of Salt Lake City. Really turned up for this thing. They dedicated their time. We had amazing volunteers.
Yeah.
I think there was maybe one absence during the rehearsals of the local, amateur cast. It was just phenomenal. They made our lives way easier than it could have been. But
yeah, because you need local talent. You need so many people to do those big group events.
Right.
During the opening ceremonies when they're carrying, whatever they're doing and carrying like individual lights or they have like the cards that they flip over and it like turns into one color or something. You can't just fly those extra actors in from LA and New York. Like you need the serious cooperation. And I imagine it was a huge piece of pride to the people of Salt Lake City.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. 1,000%. It's funny you bring up the card stunts because my friend Steve Boyd is kind of the expert at that whole thing. And if you can imagine, the audience loads into the arena stadium. And in Salt Lake, we were outdoors. We're at the University of Utah's outdoor stadium. So it was a little cold. So you make kits for everybody in the audience. And in those kits, there are flashlights or sparklers or LED things, whatever you want to utilize in the show. And you want them to come to the facility like hours before the show begins because they've never been there before. And you have to teach them all this stuff
right
before the show. And it is that in and of itself is a massive, massive undertaking with several coordinators that are out around different areas of the stadium, helping people work through the things and telling them, okay, when this happens, you do this and so on and so forth. So that is really like one of the hairiest bits of the show is teaching the audience who's just arrived and has no idea what's happening. Why do you have this little widget in your in your box? What's that for? So that team is really astounding, as well as the props team. John Sadler and his wife just do amazing things. It is a mind-blowing team. If you look up the credits for that show, it is just off the charts, filled with talent, top to bottom, in every department. Because the expectation is it's got to be the best.
Oh yeah.
And my counterpart at the stadium, John Whitaker, local guy, like heart and soul, like totally in it. And we made a great team. And then it's such a massive undertaking. There's counterparts on the venue side. So you have the International Olympic Committee, the IOC. Then you have the local host city team. And then you have the venue management team. So there's all this massive, the org chart's nuts. On the venue side, we were very fortunate that they had this man, Ron Cameron, in charge of kind of managing the oversight on the venue's behalf, basically, for the organizing committee. I learned so many lessons from that man. It's crazy. And then there was, there was a logistics team on that side, and we had our team, and art director was, we had two really astounding art directors, Jeremy Relton and Richard Schreiber. And we basically took over a football field and covered it completely in dirt. And then built an ice rink on top of it. And now the NHL plays these outdoor games all the time now, but nothing like this had been done really. So
right.
We built this.
It's a brilliant concept. I love those outdoor games they do.
Yeah. So this was, kind of there was like one company in Canada who knew how to do this at the time. So, you know, it's anyway, you know, I'm kind of going on a ramble here, but understandably, it was just everything on that event was beyond what you could imagine in terms of combining craft, technology, artistry, and then just the will of humans to make something magic happen. So.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because we're talking about the break, you know, maybe, and I was asking what was the first break in television, and you had all these experiences leading up to it. And then you get to this one, and this was almost like just a ginormous break, but also one that obviously runs very deep with you, with these personal relationships you have, that it doesn't end at Salt Lake. And these great memories continue on and then lead you into the summer games in Athens, where the games all began. And now, are you becoming the Olympic guy now? Is this like what your brand is becoming?
Well, it could have been. Athens, one of the key people in Athens was Jeff Bennett, who I had mentioned was one of the producers in Salt Lake City. And he called me it was the fall of 2003 and said, "Hey, what are you doing? Want to come to Greece?" Like, okay.
Yes, it's the summer. I'd love to be in Greece. Oh, you'll be working.
Right.
You're like, yeah, we'll go to Mykonos. We'll hit some parties. You know, we'll stay up till. No, it's you'll be going to be working on the Olympic Games.
Well, we did both, but that's what you do when you're in Greece. But so he told me that Ron Cameron was also being offered work. So it was kind of a mini reconfiguration of some part of the team from Salt Lake. And so Ron and I went over to
he's Jake, you're Elwood. You're getting the band back together.
That's right. Absolutely. It's light outside, I'm wearing shades, and have a tank of gas, whatever all those
Let's hit it.
details are. I used to have it memorized. And then one of the logistics leads from the venue side in Salt Lake, Tim Fidel, one of my buddies, we brought him over as well. So the three of us basically became the stadium management team in Athens. And that was an interesting mix because it was, again, locals, you know, because it's up to Greece to run the thing. Then the Yanks and Brits and Aussies. So it was a really massive international mix and quite a fun group. Some brilliant minds, some like top of the charts creativity, and about a 180 experience from Salt Lake City in terms of environment. If I'll put it that way. You know, the Greeks are a little bit more laid back. They like to take coffee breaks. You know,
summer in Europe is a little different than winter in Utah.
Yeah. So, but again, the pride, the local pride, the national pride, the city pride that shows up really does come to life when it matters. We had a lot of construction going on. You know, Calatrava designed a new roof for the stadium, and that was a massive engineering job. Really, I want to say Athens was if like London was, which is a lot of the same engineering and technical group from Greece. It's like, I don't know if anybody remembers the show, but the opening ceremony in Athens starts with a football-sized pool, a lake, basically, a body of water. And, you know, there's a little bit of stuff that starts the show, but one of the biggest moments in the show is a hole opens up in the middle of this lake, and a 30-foot tall Cycladic head rises out of the ground to hover in front of you. And so these guys, well, first we had to get permission to drill this hole all the way down in the ground. It's like crazy cavern. And then, it's kind of a known thing now with all the spider cams, but the overhead wire rigging was just this, it was like a spider web of wires and cables and and whatever that would move all the parts, because the head came up out of the ground and then it split into pieces. And then there was like objects inside, and it was just like the most phenomenal engineering feats I had ever been around. So to celebrate that and still have it look creative and beautiful and all of that, was just, I can't explain how astounding it is to be around witnessing these things happening. It's just, really, I just need to do my job and stay out of the way most of the time. So the big challenge with Athens, though, was we were in the same stadium that was going to host track and field and football, soccer. So we're in Salt Lake. We had the arena to ourselves. In Athens now, we have to play with the sports teams. So we had to create.
And they're going to be playing there like starting the next day.
Right. So
you got to clean up.
Right. So we drained the pool, but the structure's still there. And so they built one of those slide-in fields. So the turf is on a raised bed, basically above the pool. And then all the track and field stuff could still happen. The track was still there. The sand pits were still there, all of that sort of stuff. So then on the back end, the last event in the stadium ended at about 11:30 on Saturday nights. I think it was the last football match or something. At any rate, 24 hours later we would be done with closing ceremonies. So we had to have everybody on standby. So as soon as that event ended and the audience cleared the venue, we came crashing in and set up everything for closing ceremonies.
Yeah. Like the Super Bowl halftime show. You're like, we've got 2 minutes to make this thing happen.
Exactly. And so we put everything together to do it. We do run-throughs, rehearsals, because nobody's been able to work in the space on this show.
Yeah.
And right up until the audience starts to show up in the afternoon, and then we do the show, and then we do a little bit of strike work as well. So I think I was up about 36 hours or so straight to make that happen.
Jeez.
So that was crazy.
So I'm trying to figure out the answer to this question, but the athletes are famous for, once they get done with their work or on the fields, whatever, it's party time. And these Olympic villages are legendary for the parties and the crazy stuff that goes on. Is there a separate one for the producers? Because it almost seems like you have to do your partying during the games, and then afterwards, there's no more party. There's no closing party for you because you're running the closing ceremony.
Right. We have to kind of wait and have our own little mini celebrations, kind of like from the years of theater where you have like a cast party, you do something later where it's like you have no responsibilities the next day. Yeah. So you can drink all the ouzo you want. It's the thing is the reason we do what we do is we want people to have fun. And certainly, the attendees and the crowd, they want to have a good time. The athletes, I think once they do the athletes parade in the opening ceremonies, which is, long and whatever, but there's the piece of protocol might seem a little draggy to most people watching, but that's the whole reason we're there, is for the athletes and for competition. Our thing was icing on the cake. So I mean, these are all young people, and they're all beautiful and fit. So sure, they're going to have a good time. Who wouldn't? And there's things that are done together to manage the protection of the athletes is the reason you set up an athletes village, so that they can be secure. They get all of the food and nutrition planning that they need, and they have a place to go that they know is going to be secluded, and they'll be with people like themselves. As far as we go, uh, basically you rent an apartment,
Yeah.
for however long you're there.
Yeah, you don't have to work out. You don't need a gym. You just but you got a fridge full of beer or whatever. So,
Right. Yeah. And, the early days are normal days. If you're ahead enough time. In Salt Lake, I got there right before we got handed over the stadium, which was right after Thanksgiving. So if you think from, the Thanksgiving weekend, the end of November until the first week of February, is the window of time we had to get everything installed, built, tested, and ready to go. So it was super crazy. And then you have 3 weeks between opening ceremony and closing ceremony to do all the work to get ready for that. And then I also stayed to help support the Paralympics events that come about a month later. Just so there's some consistency. Yeah, just so there's some consistency with all the knowledge that's been gathered during the main ceremonies. Because what purpose does it serve to leave another team out in the dark? So, as much as possible, the idea was to transfer. In fact, the IOC has a whole division called TOK, Transfer of Knowledge, so that we don't have to restart the learning every time we do a games. That you take the best practices from each one and build that into the stream for everyone that comes next.
So then after the Olympics are behind you, and that was amazing that you stayed on for the Paralympics, but a couple years later, you establish a new production company because you now have this big brand, Red Bull, that you're working with, and you got the race expansion team happen. And did Red Bull call you and say, you're our guy? And then you're like, well, then this guy better have a company, because I just got hired by one of the fastest growing brands out there. Red Bull was exploding at that time as a brand.
Yes. And as everyone probably knows, Red Bull, except for the cartoonish gives you wings ads, they don't run commercials. They don't buy billboards by and large. They host these attention-getting events. They have like Crashed Ice and other words, they just, Flugtag, Flying Day, where people launch silly flying devices off of piers. So, they do things like that to get people's attention. And in late 2005, a friend of mine who worked for the San Diego Sports Council who called and said, hey, this Red Bull is sniffing around to do this event. You might want to give them a call. I was like, okay, sure. So I got a name and I reached out and I said, hey, I'm interested to learn more about this. And I had an initial conversation with the guy who was kind of running the marketing event side of things at the North American office at the time, AJ White, and he's a great dude. And I didn't hear from him for a while, so I called him back. And I think what ended up happening was I was the one that was dumb enough to keep asking about it. I was like, I just thought it sounded like a fascinating thing. And once you see a video of what the event is, if you're into things that go fast, it's like, oh my God, I got to be around this. It's crazy. Right. So you take something like, IndyCar or Formula One and put it in the sky, basically. So they originally brought me on as a consultant because they had a production company at the time. And two of my best buds who we've gone on to become great friends since then. Michael Goldman and Greg Fox and their team, they were the production company of record at the time. And I think the delay in me getting into the job was because they were having trouble figuring out where to host this thing. They had tried to go to Miami. They had done it the year before in San Francisco. So they sort of said, well, let's just go back and do San Francisco again and see if we can make it better.
Okay.
And so as an easier lift, we were riding the coattails of Fleet Week. that big celebration. So we just kind of, because they have to get permission for so many things to begin with, we just kind of hopped on to their permit process and their integrated meetings with, because you're talking about having to meet with people like at the FAA and the Coast Guard and huge governmental agencies to get everything sorted out. And everyone's very concerned about the waterfront in San Francisco, so you have to be very gentle, and you have to get engineering studies and all these particular things. So the benefit of the air race, it's Red Bull's based in Austria. So the core team for the Red Bull air race was also based in Austria or around Europe. And a huge contingent travels with the event. So all of the broadcast technology, communications technology, the handling of the aircraft, and anybody who knows Red Bull's profile at other events like at NASCAR or other things is that they build custom structures. And one's infamously known as the Energy Station, and it's like a quarter moon sort of shaped thing, and it's very they trick it out with carpet and nice furniture and bartending and all that sort of thing. So they bring all that equipment in. It all comes on big aircraft freight planes and gets unpacked and trucked in, and it's like a little mini army. And so then after that experience, then I offered to start my company to then go on and produce them fully for the next couple of years. So that's how that all got underway.
Amazing. And then you go on to Entertainment Design Corporation, where you win the prestigious Themed Entertainment Association Award. Friends, Chris is way too humble to say that he's won this award 3 times, but he has. But tell us about the first time. The first time you won this award. That's the first time story I want to hear about. Right.
Well, so I'll actually start with the third time.
Okay.
To get back to the origin. So to kind of tie things right, there you go. So Salt Lake City, I had mentioned Jeremy Relton was the art director, and Entertainment Design Corporation is his company. So another friend of mine had gotten a call from Jeremy and said, I have this project in Singapore that needs some help. Can you put together a team and make it happen? So there were 3 of us that went to check out what these projects were about. So as Ed Marks, Bob Chambers, and myself, and then we would put together a team. And we went to Singapore and we're like, okay, what's going on? And there were going to be these 3 installations. That's kind of associated with like themed entertainment was what we would generally call it, which covers everything from theme parks to like what you see on the Strip in Las Vegas with the Bellagio fountains and the volcano and the wow sort of things that happen at casinos. And this was exactly that. Is Singapore had granted 2 casino licenses, and we got jobs to work for one of the owners, Resorts World, and the big thing that we had to create there was a show called The Crane Dance that Jeremy had designed, which was basically a love story between 2 mechanical birds. These mechanical birds just happened to be made out of steel, and they were 100 feet tall. Yeah. And
this is how Angry Birds started, right? They were in love, and then they got angry, and it became Angry Birds. I believe this is. I see the connection.
Okay, actually, kind of would have been funny. Now that you
maybe angry it. Then love. Yeah.
Right. Makeup. It's the makeup story. The Crane Dance sits on a concrete barge in the bay between Sentosa and the mainland of Singapore. And you have these 2 steel birds on hydraulics and articulated arms. They've got huge, like 20 25-foot wide LED panels as chest plates that had original content. Original music score done by Paul Markovich, who is the band leader on The Voice. Not a lot of people know it, but Paul's extraordinarily talented and can write beautiful orchestral music. And all of it was tied together with, modern control systems, and there was theatrical lighting and water fountains and pyro, and it's just like everything. So it was this mega over the top sort of experience. And we were very fortunate to be awarded a TEA for that project. And so we were at the awards dinner. I was looking through the program, and I was looking at the history of other things that had won TEA awards. And it turns out that both the Salt Lake and the Athens Olympics had won TEA awards. I just didn't know about it.
So the third one, you're up there, you're like, wow, what an honor. This is amazing. I want to thank Jim, Tom. And then you're like, I have two of these already? I already have two. Oh, my God.
Right. So I was able to, say, oh, hey, could I claim my awards? And actually, sitting right back there.
Nice.
So the original TEA award that Jeremy has is a bigger thing. The participation trophy is a little smaller.
Yeah, it's you get the World Series trophy, then everybody gets a little replica. I get it. I understand. So
Right.
So while we're there on these awards, let's stay here because let me talk about your awards. I know you don't want to, but what's it like when I mentioned earlier, I teased that you have 4 Emmys besides the TEAs, which are awesome, but 4 Emmys. So what's it like to get that call that the work that you've been working on, and maybe it's a team call, maybe the head of the team gets the call, but that work is being recognized with the highest honor in your business, and then why don't you have all 4 of them right in front of you on your desk right now? Because I would put them on a chain, and I would have them hanging around me like Mark Spitz in that old 1976 photo with all of his medals and the chest hair to go along with it. I've got that.
Yeah. Well, the short answer is they're at my mom's house. So she can admire them. Just where most of my awards are at my mother's house. But the first Emmy came from actually when I was working at ABC, the ABC affiliate, and doing special projects. We were really fortunate. One of my cohorts there, Kip Cole, and I did a lot of the special projects things together, and somehow the station hired this guy by the name of Pierre Kimsey, who had been in Chicago and Charlotte and other big markets, and somehow ended up with us. He brought so much of a lift to our quality of writing, of structure of pieces, particularly when we were doing the comedy show. And we would go on to do a lot of documentary work together. And he gave us insight into how the whole Emmy process worked because he had won them before. And when somebody sort of opens that door and goes, oh, you actually do have something that could compete at a certain level. And so we took a shot and sent some things in, and we were shocked to get nominated. And then we went to the award ceremony, and we were equally shocked to actually win the dang thing. So, it was, I want to say it was like a fluke, but it took somebody coming along to say, the work you're doing measures up quality-wise to everything else that's competing, in this particular category maybe, or in this sort of craft, because there's Emmys for writing and, technical direction and whatever. So there are ways to win Emmys that aren't about being the star of the show. And that, that was where my first 2 came from, was that, that sort of kick in the pants from Pierre. And then the other two came from they're actually technical Emmys that came from being associated with the air race.
With the air race, with Red Bull.
Yeah. Yes. So I said to the guys, I said, we should enter this in the Emmys, like really should enter it for the Emmys in a couple of categories. Like, A, it's a great sports show that's super unique. B, we do so many technical things that are above and beyond. Wireless cameras, are certainly a thing, have been a thing,
Yeah.
like around the Tour de France and all that sort of thing. But the way in which we were employing them at the time, and how we did all of the data displays and all of these sorts of things, I thought were worthy of attention, and it turned out to be true. So
You were correct.
yeah. So I kind of, passing along the lesson I learned from Pierre to these guys is like, you do something extraordinary, at least put it out there for consideration.
Oh, yeah.
If nothing else, people become more aware of what you're doing. Even if you are just, in the submission category, let alone the nomination category. And then obviously being, at the winning table is kind of an extraordinary thing to do, especially for a team from Europe. To win an American award was really, really special for them. So
the spoils of victory. Now, you've talked about these installations, from the Olympics and so on, and the awards that you won, the TEAs. Then you're hired by Fiat Chrysler, and they're asking for this entire new integrated show concept for the biggest auto show in America, Detroit, when they're unveiling the new models, etc. So explain this concept, and what did they have you do, and what did you guys design and then install?
Yeah. So if you haven't glanced a thread that runs through my career is the tackling of craziness, big logistics and integration. So the Fiat, the FCA show was really interesting. It was put together by a blend of companies. So the George P. Johnson, which is a huge events marketing company, and they do a lot of amazing work. And there was a company out of Australia called SpinFX, which is a video and effects house, and they wanted to land an office in North America, and they ended up partnering together. So I was specifically working with SpinFX to deliver the media for the space, but then they needed somebody to kind of choreograph and pull all the elements together. We had, I like to say it was over like bazillion pixels, but it was 20 LED screens that were around this space, and I can't remember how many square feet the stand was, but it was huge. It was huge enough to fit all of the brands: Dodge, Ram, Chrysler, Fiat, Alfa Romeo, Mopar. The whole idea was to completely change the game of what an auto show stand looked like. And most of them are beautiful, like Ford, Chevy, Cadillac, Lincoln. They all do these beautiful stands with fancy LED and lighting and architecture, and they're just beautiful places. What FCA wanted to do, and we worked directly with their creative director, Waleed, who was just a blast to work with, and created. So we had the 20 screens. We had columns that were throughout the stand that were wrapped in LED. They had designed custom overhead ring lights that were all made out of LED. Then we hung speakers all over the roof, mounted theatrical lighting, and then stitched together an audio soundtrack. So essentially, it was a 1 hour repeating show. And throughout the time, each brand would take over the entire space. So every once in a while, the entire stand would turn into Alfa Romeo, and the Giulia would race around the screens. We designed it so it looked like the car actually drove through the entire space. So the whole planning of how to make each screen be independent, then work together, and then choreograph. So all, way back to my theater days of everything, taking all the elements and putting them together, so all that thread that goes through the Olympics and everything else is, ABC pieces need to go together to create this experience. And, worked on putting all the media together. And then we got on site in Detroit. It was freezing cold. Oh my God, it was so cold. We got there when the river was literally frozen over. So we started like blocking things out. And then the team from Sydney came over, and we basically rented out a meeting room at a hotel right up the street from the convention center. And we were finishing and doing revisions and whatever the whole time leading up to getting it all stitched together. And the AV team from George P. Johnson came in and brought all the technical boxes and gizmos you need to make all that stuff happen. And I'm like, here's the timeline, and handed them a sheet of paper with how it was supposed to piece together. And we worked through it, and it was really, I think it was pretty mind blowing. They won awards for it. And again, another one of a kind, never been done sort of thing, taking known elements and known commodities and bringing them together in a new way. And so that was pretty
So
wild.
is it more fun to work for a brand like Red Bull, or is it just more prestigious for the resume to work with a Fiat or I know you've worked with Mercedes and Lexus? Is it just better for the resume for those kind of things, or is it where you rather would just have those fun projects working on something like Red Bull?
Yeah, I think I think now I really just like, it's about what's the project. I think there's enough brand cachet on most resumes once you get to my stage of the career where, really it's about like just reminding people that, top tier brands like ESPN and Lexus have trusted me to do something representing their brand. So, whoever you are, maybe that gives you some comfort in the fact that, I've done grown up work. So so at this point, it's really about what's fun. And ironically, festivalPass is, a music festival is like the one thing I probably haven't done. I'd love to work on it at some point.
This is cake for you, just putting on a music festival. Right. But look, you've done the virtual. You've been doing the virtual events as well as I have been, and it's just amazing to see, because at the beginning of the virtual events, it was like, oh, that's cute, and there were the mistakes. But then we get to February, March of this year, and they're doing the Golden Globes. And I know you've worked on the Academy Awards, but the Golden Globes, it was like people were on mute. These are actors that live in front of the camera. And the mistakes, and this is a production, I've been producing on a much smaller scale than anything that you've ever worked on. But, this is almost like your little town independent family-owned station way back in the day. We're like, hey, let's do this for a virtual event, and people are letting us run with it. They're like, yeah, well, if you think this is going to work, let's do it. So we're doing trivia. We're doing, live auctions and all this kind of stuff, raising money for different charities and so on. But, people are being tough on us, and we're producing, I think, very high quality events on a small budget. Golden Globes comes around. This is a multi-million-dollar budget. And how were there just so many mistakes? Was it just because people are just still learning on the job with this? Or was there just not enough rehearsals, perhaps? Maybe they just couldn't get the actors for rehearsal time because they're used to just walking up and accepting an award. Now they have to unmute their computer. But then it's like people didn't have the camera at, they're like down here, or they like, they're out of the frame or something. And you're like, how do you not know how to work this at this point? Right. Were you surprised to see
everybody's favorite
all those
thing,
issues?
Jason Sudeikis being half awake, in a hoodie.
He was in London. He was 5 hours ahead too. I didn't realize that at the time, but
right. Yeah, I just did an event a couple of weeks ago. It was a small event. It was really just, helping some friends out, but, didn't really get much rehearsal. Got a little bit of walk around with the talent. This was everybody's first back in person with a crew, with attendees, hybrid broadcast live event scenario, like a lot of them are. And everyone's rusty. Everyone's just rusty, and the reason why the Grammys take over the Staples Center for 2 weeks is because there's a lot to load in, and everybody, and they want to run those rehearsals of all those performances as much as they can.
Yeah.
Walk through all the different things that they've got going on, because and this is the way it was with the Olympics, is you run rehearsal again from the old school theater days. You cast it, you table read it, you stand it up on stage, you do your blocking, you do technical rehearsal, you do run through, notes, and then you open. And the whole reason that process exists is because when the curtain goes up, metaphorically, the clock strikes 6 or whatever it is you're on, and you got to go, and you got to, there's no time. It's live, which is the freak out about live, but also the excitement about live is it's time to go. There's no like, oh, can we hold the house 5 minutes? No, it's time. we're rolling the opening segment. Go.
Yeah.
And so, Zoom is a kerfuffle for some people, and it's like, some people are technologically challenged, and some people aren't bothered or whatever. And I think actually the charming thing about all of it is, in the end, you're reminded that they're just human beings.
Yeah.
Like the rest of us. It's like, okay, so somebody notable doesn't know how to unmute their mic on a Zoom call, or doesn't know that something like this or some AirPods would sound better than the boxy mic on the laptop
on the screen, right?
But you get what you get. You're asking people to do certain things or go out of their way, participate from wherever they are, and some people embrace it, and some people are like, whatever.
Well, this has been incredible, unbelievable stories. Thank you for letting us in on the inside of what's happening. I mean, the Olympic stuff alone, incredible. But so how can we find out more about your next big project, and how can we continue to follow your career?
That's a really good question, Pat.
There's usually people are like, well, go to at Wine and Food Festival or at Music Festival. But, you're behind the scenes, man. This is the stuff we take people behind the scenes. People want to know.
I'm not sure where I'm going next. So I would say just find me on LinkedIn, and I'll post whatever I'm doing next there, probably. That's, the summer is coming. Things are coming back. Like you started off early on, Broadway is back this fall.
Yes.
We've got crowds at sporting events. A lot, all the big music festivals. I think Austin City Limits and Lollapalooza have announced. Bottle Rock is announced. So all of that's starting to come back. The fall is going to be insane. Assuming everything keeps going on track. So
that pent up demand we keep hearing about is here.
Yeah. So I'm always having conversations. So my path goes wherever I end up next. So
So festival producers out there, he has not produced a music fest, and he's got the chops to do it. And he's just like looking for the right opportunity. And he's like, maybe I'll do that. Maybe I won't. But it's, as he said, it's more about the opportunity than the brand. So very exciting stuff. Chris Homsley, thank you so much for this. This is incredible. And we'll see you on the next production of Festival Pass next time. Thanks again, Chris.
Thanks, Pat. It was a pleasure.
This is FestivalPass Stories, a podcast series is told by the people who create and make festivals come to life. You will go behind the stage, kitchen, or studio door to hear the stories of passion and inspiration that started some of the world's most beloved festivals. Hear the startup stories and how an idea went from what if to what's next.